Okay, everyone, we are recording tonight's program, so if you want somebody to see the program that wasn't able to make it with us tonight, please let them know. It will be on the Red Bank Public Library's YouTube, or they can check it out on Facebook. If there's any kind of problems, always contact the library. But this is a program we want to share with as many people as possible. So first I have to tout the Red Bank Public Library, because we've always said how this program won the 2018 Multicultural Award for Best Program in the state as far as offering multicultural programs. But this year we swept the NJLA Awards. If any of you have been in our programs, you know we had Allison Perrine when she was working at the Two River Times. She was with us for every single program we had pretty much until she left the Times a few months ago. We nominated her and she won the Journalism Award from the New Jersey Library Association's awards. And she worked for Two River Times, and we, really are indebted to how she covered this programs, and it was a very well-deserved award. We also won the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Award this year. We won 5 awards, 3 of which really pertain to what we're doing here tonight. One of the awards also, our colleague and dear friend Sarah Williams won for an innovative program. It just shows you when things turn sour, how you can turn things around. When COVID hit, we were all very frustrated about our programming and how we would continue to do the work that we were doing. And Sarah started a family race and diversity story time. I mean, Sarah should be on national television. She is absolutely fabulous. This is a program that is so great. And if you can't, get there for when she does the program, it's geared to young children, but they're recorded and you can go back and see all the different programs she's done. We also won our a trustee award for Ann Chapatoni and Rising Star Award for Candace Valor. So they will be celebrating all of this in Atlantic City on Thursday night next week when the awards are presented. And I'm pretty sure that Red Bank won more awards than any other libraries in the state. So we were really, really well recognized. We don't often toot our horn. We're so busy doing things that we forget to publicize. But this time we did, and we really, took a lot of awards. So that was great. I also want to let you know there is the Community Historical Marker Unveiling Ceremony in Eatontown on Saturday, June the 18th at 11 a.m. And it will be commemorating Samuel Johnson, nicknamed as Mingo Jack. We have at the library, as well as at T. Thomas Fortune, there is a soil collection display. You can come into the library, you can see it. We have all kinds of flyers about giving information about, he was lynched in what, 1865, was it, Gilda?
I think it's 1886.
Okay, but there will be a historical marker unveiling ceremony, as I said, in Eatontown. The New Jersey Social Justice Remembrance Coalition has worked so hard at putting all this together. They've worked, Sarah Klepner actually is the person that brought the soil collection to the library. But I ask, that you take a look at all of this and join what's happening in Eatontown on June the 18th. As I said, if it does rain, it's in Wampum Memorial Park. You'll be able to go on June 19th. It's 11 a.m. on the 18th. It's at 12 p.m. on the 19th. But join the community members for the unveiling and dedication of this historical marker. They've worked really, really hard for this. We're also going to be putting up a display at the library, a quilt exhibit, and this will feature artistic quilts done by Gloria Douglas and Michelle Lewis, who call themselves Storytellers in Cloth. This display was also, some of their quilts was shown at the T. Thomas Fortune House when it was originally brought to my attention. And they founded a quilting retreat in 1995 for women of color to express themselves artistically. Quilting is a Black tradition dating back to slavery, when quilts were used as a compass for those who were escaping freedom. And the quilts can be found in museums all across the state, actually. I think that they might have an exhibit in Middletown as well. So that's another thing that's coming up. There are endless programs happening at the Red Bank Library, but two I want to mention. One is guided journaling, and it is done by Jen Shields, who is a licensed counselor. It's a great program, and we have limited spots. It's done virtually, and we actually have some open spots. So if you're interested, go online, look at the library's calendar, and register for it. Also, we're looking to start a beginner Spanish program. Anybody that might be interested in this program, if you could email me, I'm Linda Hewitt, and let me know, because this is another, we have an advanced conversational Spanish program that's done remotely. This would be a program held at the library. We are looking to bring our Let's Talk About Race program back to the library. We have Wi-Fi at the library, but it's not perfect. So we're trying for a grant where we can bring in more equipment so we could be able to share this remotely, as well as once again be in person. More and more things are coming back to the library. I think it's a great thing if you get our newsletter. You'll learn all about what's happening rather than listening to me drone on about all the programs. It would take our whole program to let you know everything that's going on at the library. One last thing, I think that our next Let's Talk About Race program, which will be held on June the 29th, it's always the last Wednesday of the month, will be on New Jersey's Indigenous people. And we should have Chief Mann, who's from the Lenape Ramapo Native American tribe, talking about, you know, problems and situations on Indigenous lands. So hopefully we'll see you all with us that night. We have a great program tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Patty White, who's on the Let's Talk About Race Committee and donates so much of her time to make this a viable program. Patty?
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Linda. It's my honor to be a part of this ongoing program. We're coming up to 7 years in August, right, Linda? 7 years since it started.
2015.
And it's a committee, it's a group effort. In addition to the people who have helped us in the past, our small working committee right now, of course, is Linda and Claire Phelps, who are both work at the library. Rick Gefkin, I see he's on the call. He's been helping us in recent months. Kerwin Webb has been a steadfast supporter. And Dr. Walter Grayson, even though he has left for the Midwest, still supports our program when he can. And we have had some amazing programs, wonderful speakers, and I always like to remind everyone that none of our speakers get paid. We are volunteers on the committee, and the people who do these wonderful programs volunteer their time and talent. So I would like to introduce our topic for this evening, which, as you know, is the Cedar View Cemetery, which is a 19th century African-American burial ground right in Middletown. I just want to tell you a really short story. I had heard about this cemetery a few years ago from Claire Garland, who's also done programs for us. And she mentioned the location, which was right next to St. Leo's Church, which, you know, if you drive down 520, you pass it all the time. So one day I happened by, and in fact, it was 2 years ago. I remember because it was COVID time and I was wearing a mask, even though I was outdoors. And I ran into a man John Smack, who was there with another young man visiting relatives, family that were buried in this cemetery. And so we chatted a little, and a couple of weeks later, I was looking at a document that I have from another friend in the area who used to live in Lincroft, Patty Bean, who was, I was told, was the first African-American to be certified as a teacher in the state of Pennsylvania. And in this document was the name May Smack. And I said, this can't be a coincidence. And fortunately, I found John Smack on Facebook, and he knew my friend Patty Bean and so on. So that was my first introduction to Cedarview. And these folks are going to tell you the amazing stories of the acquisition of the property and the people involved, and why it means something to all of us today. Dr. Joelle is going to begin the program. She is an associate professor at the School of Social Work at Monmouth University. She's also a researcher in the areas of fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, as well as global mental health, and has even initiated a relationship and ongoing research with Cato University in Germany. She has written a book called Grief and Loss Across the Lifespan. She has ongoing journals, talks, and presentations. She is a founding member as well of the Friends of Cedar View Cemetery, which is now not just an informal group, but a nonprofit 501(c), I think it is. Gilda Rogers, our local wonderful person, is also multi-talented. She began her career in the arts as a visual artist, window dresser, and fashion coordinator back in the 80s and 1990s. Currently, in addition to being the executive director of the T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center right here in Red Bank, she is also the social critic and community relations manager for Two River Theater in Red Bank. She is just everywhere all the time. Everybody knows Gilda, which is probably why she got the Humanitarian of the Year Award in 2017 from the Monmouth County Human Relations Commission. I really could go on and on about Gilda's many talents. She's also the author of 3 books. The most recent one is Out of the Ashes Came Hope. And John Smack, my new best friend, is also involved in the Cedar View Cemetery, one of the founding members of the Friends of Cedar View, currently the president of the organization. And he is also local, a former Eagle Scout in the Monmouth County Boy Scouts, had his bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and is retired from a long career with the Monmouth Probation Division, working with young people and his union. The other thing about John is I discovered he recently was invited to participate in the Crystal Stream Cemetery Committee in Navesink. And I hope you'll talk a little bit about that, John, as well, because that has a little interesting history. So, friends, here's our program.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I'll start out. My name is John Smack, and thank you for having us tonight. As far as myself, I am a descendant of people interred at Friends of Cedar View at the Cedar View Cemetery. I'm the president of the board. I guess we came together in 2019, and Joelle basically started the process back in 2015, bringing everyone together, her, Joe Manzi, some St. Leo, and brought people together. And we'll have some history about that. I don't want to go too much into history and everything because Joelle will be talking about that a lot, and it's also Gilda. But as far as the board goes, we finally came together, and COVID, of course, like everything, kind of slowed things down a little bit. But then in October of 2021, we became a corporation, 501c3, and so now we can take donations, which we really need to keep things going. Quickly, as far as the members of the board, early members, I should mention, Joe Grabas did a lot of work with the board early on, did a whole lot of work, which we did appreciate. Jennifer Anderson was with us in the beginning. Right now we have, it's myself, we have a vice president is Edwin, my cousin Edwin. And anyway, and as far as I shouldn't even look at this thing here, right? Edwin Edwards, I just keep saying, thinking myself smack when he's in Edwards. Okay, Marcia Blackwell, Walter Brown, he's retired, and he's with the Pilgrim Baptist Church. Joelle, who's on the call right now, she's associate professor at Monmouth. Rick Gefkin, he's as many of you know, he's very popular. He's a local author and historian. Ines Hennessy, Maureen O'Connor Leach, who's an attorney and also was with St. Leo's, but is no longer, but she's on the board. Joe Manzi, who's an administrator with St. Leo's, and Gilda Rogers, of course, with T. Thomas Fortune and the Community Center. And basically, it's taken many of us to come together. I'm probably the least historian of, although, as my aunt said before she passed it, I'm probably the closest to an historian in the family, because I did talk to her a lot. We did do a lot of research together, not say research, but we talked about family, we talked about different things. She did most of her research, but I had papers that I had from the family home, which we held on to. And we reviewed those papers together, and it was very interesting. Right now, what we're trying to do is we're trying to, partner up with as many people as possible, many organizations, to help us keep moving forward. We are using a pro bono lawyer service, which is very helpful to us. I think it's Riker Danzer, and they, it says it's remarkable that the work that they've done for us. We've had surveys done. The last one was done, was pro bono by this engineering and land planning associates. We're looking to have a GPR done, which is it's ground penetrating radar. And this will actually, it's like, almost looks like a lawnmower, but it's not. It's a big scanner, and you push it along the ground, and the scanner will go into the earth. It's scanned like an echo, and show basically how many people, possibly show how many people might be buried at the cemetery. And we could also find other headstones that might be also right under the ground. So that would be very helpful in the restoration. And that's basically, we have the restoration is always ongoing. We have to repair a lot of the headstones. We also have to, the trees that are there, we don't want to get rid of the trees, but any trees that are dead or dying or diseased, they should be removed, because once you do a restoration, a tree falls, it could break the headstone. And it's just good to get those out of the way. And so it's continued maintenance. If we do the restoration, there's people like this place called Richard Grubbs and Associates. They're in North Jersey. They're experts in cemetery restorations. That's one area that we might go towards, but again, that costs money to do that. And right now, Middletown Township has been very helpful. They wanted to partner with us in a way, in the sense of the handshake partnerings, and help them to with cleanup and just support. They gave us a proclamation during Black History Month. It was very nice. They also will, there'll be a plaque this Memorial Day presented from Middletown Township, a nice brass plaque, and it'll be by the side of the road so people can see a lot of history on it. We also, Monmouth Conservation Foundation, not has they've taken as far as an interest as far as coming up helping us clean up, in support of we're looking for maybe more support down the road. We'll see how that goes. St. Leo's Church has been very nice. They help take care of the property. We're cutting the grass, keeping things nice for us, helping with flood cleanups, and of course Pilgrim Baptist Church was very helpful in the beginning. They were helping us with holding on to our monies until we became a 501c3, and the men's group as well have been coming out to do cleanups. And we have T. Thomas Fortune, who we've kind of adopted, or they adopted us, how it looks, we adopt each other as our kind of our home base. And we have a display there, and we're looking to have other displays. And if you have paintings or portraits, we would have them there in the future events. So I think that about it. And I guess there's mention again that we do have a few people on the board who are descendants. Like I said, Yvonne Reeves, a descendant, she is a Reeves, and myself, my cousin, and also Rob Chameau. I didn't mention his name, but that's sorry, Rob was on the other page. I know I didn't mention some of his name. Rob Chameau, he's retired, and he's also a very good historian, a great historian, and does a lot of research for us. And he's the descendant of the families there. So I think that just about covers it. It's not going too far, because I can go into my own family history and things that we've done, but it's not about me about tonight. It's about Friends of Cedarview. It's the Cedarview Cemetery.
The cemetery they're talking about?
I'm sorry?
Built in 1850, 2 acres.
Dear
by
friend.
14 Black men. It's an African American cemetery that was just
Oh,
encased.
Something happened.
Okay, everybody should.
Thank you, John. I think somebody forgot to mute.
Yes.
All right. So I guess I'll give you Joelle Zabotka.
Okay. Hi. I'm going to share my screen so I can show you some pictures, a little bit of before and after, but also just some information about the cemetery itself. Like John mentioned, we have been very, very lucky to have included in our membership some really wonderful historians, Rick, Rob Chameau, who have been able to really delve pretty deeply into the individual folks who are buried in the cemetery. So that's in and of itself an entire presentation and extraordinarily interesting. What we're going to focus on today is really a little bit more broadly on the cemetery itself, where it started as far as aesthetics and where we are now. So the cemetery has been known by various names. It's been known as the Lincroft Cemetery, Hurley's Woods Burial Ground, Reeves Burial Ground, and Cedar View Cemetery. And so I'll show you a little bit of the history as we know it of the cemetery, and a little bit of what the perspective is now and what we as a group are trying to achieve. So very interestingly, this plot of land, it's actually almost 2 acres. This plot of land changed hands in 1850 when John Crawford, who was a wealthy farmer, former slave owner, sold the plot, I shouldn't call it a plot, the acreage, for $60 to a group of 14 Black men, specifically to be used for a burying ground. That in and of itself is very interesting because think of the date, 1850, why this plot, this big acreage, 2 acres, changed hands from a white wealthy farmer to 14 Black men at the time in New Jersey. It begs some question around, was there motivation? What was that motivation for this person to sell it? The other piece that's very interesting is that the lots themselves were individually deeded, which is unusual. For instance, if you go to some other cemeteries just anywhere in the US, the cemetery might be owned by one entity, perhaps a church, and then the individual locations of burial are the land itself is not individually owned. In our case, for this cemetery, each of those plots, those 24 lots, are individually owned, and they were assigned throughout the people who are listed there. The first 14, with Alexander Frost buying the remaining 12 lots. He then turns around in 1852, and we know sold lot 14 to Shores Frost. Eventually down the line, sells more of those plots. Now, I love maps. I don't know if you do, but I love to look at maps, old maps. And so this is a map or a drawing of the plots themselves, and it's oriented to the side, so to speak. So this here, over here, would be Hurley's Lane, if you're familiar at all with Hurley's Lane. And this lot number 1 is Silas Reeves. And then all the way deep back. So if you were standing on Hurley's Lane, you really wouldn't be able to see these lots back here, number 12 and number 24, because they're pretty deep into the land. What you would see from the street are these 2 lots here, number 1 and number 13. So it's a very long cemetery and a little bit more on the narrow side. Here's the maps that I find truly astonishingly interesting. This is a map of 1873 of the area. And we were very lucky. Joe Grabus got these very early on. I should say, and I'll say in a minute again, we started to clean the cemetery in 2015. So very early on, Joe Grabus was able to get these maps, and I put them in the slides. If this is the little green circle that I made, would be the cemetery. You can see it has really no markings. It's not noted to be a cemetery at all. This dotted line is the beginnings of what would become Hurley's Lane. At this point, it's not a lane, it's a path. And across the street, if you can see it, another little green circle with a little cross there, excuse me, is the cemetery that's across the street from St. Leo's Church. Now, that is marked. It's a very small familial burying ground, and it's marked as such. But at this point, even though 1873, we're 23 years past the Cedar View Cemetery beginning to bury folks in it, is not designated on the map at all. Here now we jump to 1889. I love looking at the area because if you know Lincroft at all, Lincroft is incredibly populated nowadays. And to look at how it is here, so broad and farmland, I'm intrigued by. This again is now Hurley's Lane. It's growing a little. It's dotted line still, but it's becoming a real lane. Over here, we have that same small familial burying ground across from St. Leo's Church. And here is where Cedar View Cemetery is. Again, it has no designation. It's not noted anywhere on the map. And now we are many, many years into the cemetery being in existence. In 1940, we have the first aerial view of the area, the cemetery. And again, this part will soon, before we know it, become a neighborhood. Right now, in 1940, it's not, it's farmland. And you can see probably a line of trees that are designating the cemetery. And if you look really closely, you can see probably what's headstones, or you see that this is something. It's a cemetery. It's marketed somehow, and it's 1940. In 1956, pardon my really bad circles, I'm no good drawer, it's starting to get overgrown. You can't truly see that line of pine trees anymore. It's not nice and clear like it was in 1940. It sort of blends in to the terrain, I think. I don't see it very clearly. And then 2013, here's the cemetery. it just looks like a bunch of trees. It doesn't look like there's anything there at all. I find this intriguing for a whole bunch of reasons. One, I like maps, but also just think, we talk about race and we talk about social justice. And here we have on the other side of the street, a tiny little cemetery or burying ground that's had its due on the maps all the way back to 1873. But yet Cedarview, significantly larger at about 2 acres, does not officially appear on our maps of the area. So this is just a list, and these are thanks to the efforts of a whole lot of wonderful historians who, yes, some of these people are listed on headstones. There are about 54 headstones in the cemetery. We know that there are well more than 54 people buried there. We surmise that perhaps somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 folks are buried back in Cedarview. But through the efforts of many of our wonderful historians, we've been able to ascertain many more people who we know to be buried in Cedarview. Many of which, by the way, 11 are Civil War veterans. And so that alone, people have asked me, why are you spending so much time in that cemetery? Because many, many years of my husband's, myself, my children, the Boy Scouts, family members, church members have been devoted to cleaning this cemetery. But when you think about it, there's really no other way that we should be showing respect for folks that have died. How could we not keep and restore burying lands? We have to do this. So some interesting, just some smattering of pictures thrown in. This is a picture of Charles and Hannah Reeves. The Reeves family have actually 2 large plots in the cemetery. Charles and Hannah, you can see their date of deaths are 1900 and 1915. We've been able to, through no effort of my own, we've been able to find the obituary of Charles Reeves from the Red Bank Register dated September 5th, 1900. Also, to me, interesting, if you want to take a moment and read through this, interesting the type of information that was put into obituaries in 1900 versus what we might find today had we opened today's newspaper. He was owned by David Williamson of Homedale until he was 25, when he was freed. Charles Reeves of Lincrofts died last Wednesday of Bright's disease, age 80 years. He was taken sick about 5 months ago, and since that time, he'd been unable to leave his bed. The funeral was held on Friday at 2 o'clock in the house and at 3 o'clock at the Lincroft Chapel. The body was buried in Cedar View Cemetery. Mr. Reeves was born in Homedale. In his youth, he was a slave owned by David Williamson. He was freed when he reached the age of 25. He then left and worked at different times on several farms in the vicinity. When about 30, he married Hannah Van Cleef of Middletown. He was at that time working for Garrett D. Hendrickson, which is also a well-known name in Monmouth County. After about a year after his marriage, he went to the Brookdale farm and stayed there 10 years. He then moved to Lincroft, worked for George W. Crawford of Nut Swamp for 30 years. He had lived in the same house at Lincroft ever since his removal there. Mr. Reeves was one of the best known colored men in Middletown Township. He was a member of the Baptist Church at Red Bank, and for 33 years had rarely missed a Sunday. I like this part. After his marriage, he and his wife walked from Lincroft to Red Bank every Sunday morning, returning home at noon, and he would go alone to church every Sunday night. In later years, you can't see it. It talks about in later years, he was able to buy a horse with which he and his wife went to church. And after he got the horse, the children became regular attendants. In our society, how our reliance on transportation and cars, I don't know if you can imagine walking from Lincroft to Red Bank once a week to attend services.
Right. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, I'm going to move us along a little bit. By the way, if anyone has any comments or questions, please feel free to hop in and jump. We're happy to answer or discuss and kick around anything that you might have of interest. This is Charles and Hannah Reeves plot as it looks today. Their stones are right here. Clearly not the stones of their age of death in 1900 and 1915. These stones clearly were replaced, more modernized. So a little bit about what we walked into in 2015 when we became involved. The cemetery looked like that picture in 2013. It was 100% overgrown. We know that there had been some attempt over the years, specifically in 1991 and before, to do some cleaning and preservation of the land. Obviously, it was not sustained, but if you can see, this is the overgrown everything, and here's one little headstone. So back in those early days in 2015 and 2016, when we were walking into this and you couldn't get into the cemetery from Hurley's Lane, you had to climb over the hill from the St. Leo's property where they now have solar panels and climb up the hill and into the cemetery that way. And we had a lot of Boy Scouts in those days, and they were very enthusiastic, amazingly enough. And I loved to hear when one of the Boy Scouts would say, "I found one." And that meant that somebody had found one of the headstones, and like, you know, flames, you had all these other Boy Scouts running to where the one who had yelled was to see what he had found. And most often he found this. Yes.
Joelle, is there any kind of a story that leads up to what precipitated this recent endeavor? Because it looks like there's records over the years. It fell into kind of overgrowth, but what prompted this?
The way that I got involved, my husband had been very involved with the Scouts and scouting, and the St. Leo's had done a good turn for the Boy Scouts and allowed them to use their rooms. And my husband said, "If there's anything Boy Scouts can do for you, St. Leo's, please let us know. We're happy to return the favor." And so my husband got a call one day to say they are clearing some land for solar panels, and they're seeing what they think is a small cemetery behind the solar panels. And maybe some Boy Scouts could come with a couple of rakes and do a little bit of cleaning. So I heard that and I was intrigued. So I followed with my husband and walked into this. Now, clearly what we found was not going to be helped by a few Boy Scouts and some rakes. But it was important enough to start getting lots of Boy Scout troops to come. And so that's really what started it. Just this knowledge that there was what we didn't know how big, but we saw at least a few stones back there, not preserved, not respected, not anything, and that we needed to clean it, not realizing at the time how ginormous the land was. So we started out with a couple of Boy Scouts, and then it went from there. So here's another picture. Again, if you see right here, there's a headstone lying down. There's a tree on the top of this base of a headstone. This all would be cleaned up, and you'll see the after shots, which are so much better. We were using at the time, I bought some of this yellow tape from Home Depot just to kind of keep people safe and to try to put some kind of perimeter around. Some more pictures. All of these trees, of course, down had to go, had to be chopped up. You can see here, here's a headstone right where my cursor is, and it's surrounded by a whole bunch of mess. Headstones lying down, headstones just scattered on the ground, everything around them. I think I have as many pictures of the cemetery at this point as maybe my children. I don't know. I have a lot of pictures. We've been lucky to have some folks who were really great photographers, including Monmouth University's photographer came. and we have a very, very good quality picture of every single headstone as it stands, so we could get the names off of them. So as they got cleaned, or at least debrided, I guess you would say, we were able to take some very good pictures. So I just put a smattering of some of the pictures here. This one you can see was I guess there was dirt on top of the whole thing. So we had to uncover it. This has all been now cut away so that you can actually see that there's a headstone there. So it's really just all about respect. This is Silas Reeves. This is lot number 1 in the corner right by Hurley's Lane. And this is his stone. And this stone you can see if you drive very slowly up Hurley's Lane, coming away from Route 520, you can see this stone on the right side looking at the cemetery. So a little bit about what we've done. Of course, we're cleaning, and I think we'll always be cleaning. We've located each burial site, tried to make it as accessible as possible, photographed each grave site, trying to identify the owner and mark the property corners. John mentioned bringing folks in who can do ground penetrating radar, also getting surveys done of the land. And then some down here, our hope is eventually to do historic markers and perimeters for the cemetery. We've been very lucky to have 2 Eagle Scout projects be done in the cemetery. One was the entrance, which is on Hurley's Lane. And a side note, I know it was mentioned, Amanda May Edwards. The reason why the stairs are positioned where they are is because May Edwards told me that as a child, she remembered going into the cemetery with a picnic, and that's where she thought the entrance was located. And so that's where we put it. We're doing as much genealogical research as possible. I'll say that, Rob and Rick are the 2 gurus of that. Totally not my area, but our hope, we did have some of the Monmouth University graduate students in to do a little bit of personal history. We sent them to Freehold to try to get as much data as they could. And that has been wonderful, as also interesting information around who was a war veteran and making sure that we respect our veterans who are buried there. This is just a listing, and it's not comprehensive, of all the groups that have come to help us get the cemetery to where it has been today. Church groups, scouting groups, Knights of Columbus, students, older people, people who just came and brought water, weren't able to really rake or lift, but they brought water. People who donated services, Lowe's donated all of the rakes and so forth. St. Leo's did a lot for us. We were able to fill 7, I think I have a picture of it, these big dumpsters that when you do construction for your home, the really big ones, we filled 7 of them in the first 2 years of cleaning. This is Boy Scout Troop, maybe 110, I think, out of Lincroft. Yep, 110. So this is just some pictures of the different groups that have and continue to work with us. Boy Scouts, Pilgrim Baptist Church. If you look at the date, this picture was taken November 7th of 2015. This was one of our first cleanups. We started in October of 2015. So within a month, we had some church groups coming in to work with us. Here's Eagle Scout project number 1, the staircase, which led to an entrance. So you no longer had to climb through the dirt to get to the cemetery. And Eagle Scout project number 2, which is a cemetery map, which stands a little past the entrance if you walk into the cemetery. November 8th of 2015, the cemetery was clean enough. It wasn't great, but it was clean enough to have a tribute to the Civil War veterans. And we were able to, and I think I saw Ray Veth on this call. He was instrumental in making this happen, to be able to bring on some Civil War reenactors This is Ines, one of our Hennessy, one of our board members. It's a little bad camera angle. And this is Amanda May Edwards. Yes.
Can I just interrupt? I just want to ask again, we're getting a little feedback. Everyone that's not speaking, if you could just mute yourself so we can hear Joelle. Thank you. Okay.
Okay. So that's Amanda May Edwards sitting there. These are just some of the reenactors from that day. I love this picture. Such a clear, beautiful picture. Again, from that day, just being able to take some pictures of the different community members. We also had this is Monmouth University at the time, this is pre-COVID, required all entities on campus who received funding to give back, and we called it the big event, and it was a university-wide day of service. We had been designated by the big event in 2016 and 2017 as a recipient of service. So this is groups of fraternity brothers and sorority sisters all in the cemetery cleaning. I joke that, the frat boys were trying to pick up the heaviest things that they could to show off.
Show off for the girls.
Yeah, so they would everyone else would carry little things, and the frat brothers would go and try to pick up a ginormous tree. Again, just some quick pictures of our Monmouth folks, and just, I guess, the social work angle. So, in social work, part of our discipline, the tenets of social work, is built around social justice and human rights. And so part of the social work angle is just this collaboration with other groups coming together for this common purpose, which is to restore what should be a very sanctified area. So towards that, we had so not only did we have the groups come into the cemetery, but we had Amanda May Edwards come to class, and she lectured in November of 2015 to a group of Masters of Social Work students who were in a class called Applications of Social Justice and Human Rights. And she talked about her work in Genealogical Society president, and the fact that she was a descendant of the cemetery and what she had done in her younger years to help preserve the cemetery.
Joelle,
So this is
Charles Lawson.
And Charles Lawson walked with a cane, and somehow he was, I think, the president of the African American Genealogical Society. And he somehow, with his cane, got himself into the cemetery without steps, because we didn't have them then, in 2015 and 2016. And he didn't do a heck of a lot of cleaning, but he did a lot of talking and a lot of encouragement and a lot of, hey, this is great, let's do this. And he was really a force. This is how the cemetery looks today. So it looks, I can't even say 1,000% better. It looks 1,000,000% better. Here's some of our workers. There's John, Edwin. The cemetery is cleaned. There are no tree stumps or no big tree limbs on the ground anymore. You can walk it. You can walk straight to the back and be able to see the headstones. You can walk around. You can walk the path, and there's going to be a day that there's going to be a perimeter, and there's going to be even more information about each of the plots and who own them and who's buried there, because it's been 7 years, which is a long time and yet not really a long time. And we have more to go, but it's certainly on its way.
Thank you. Thank you, Joelle. That was
All
great.
you, Gilda.
That was fantastic. It really is. As Joelle has said, she has been at this. I just joined a couple of years ago. I think it kind of, if I'm right, was a little dormant at that particular moment, just at that moment. And I got involved through Jennifer Anderson. And I'm just, she walked me over to the cemetery, which I had no idea whatsoever that it was there. And when I walked in there, I don't know, I just felt something come over me. And then I started looking at the headstones and seeing the dates and knowing that and then I think she had said some of the men were, had fought in the Civil War. I teach history at Brookdale. So obviously this was just very important to me to be a part of it. And then from there, we started meeting again regularly and coming together to see what else we could do. So as Joelle has expressed, it's been an ongoing, continuous cleanup. And as you can see from what she first showed you to where it is now, like she said, it's a million times better. So it just, I just felt like this was African-American men and women buried out here, and it needed everybody's attention because this is, like she said, very sacred ground. I'm thrilled that Joelle, in her role as a professor of social work, connected with this project to bring it to the forefront so that, people like myself and others would even know about it, to be, to really delve into. Now we consider ourselves right now official. We're official now because we're a nonprofit 501c3 organization, and we're able to accept donations, and we need donations. We really need donations. If people want to help and volunteer, in lieu of volunteering or both, all at the same, we need your help because this has been done through pure volunteerism work of people just being committed to understanding the respect and the dignity that this space, this sacred hallowed ground, deserved. And now that we know, as Oprah would say, when you know, you do better, or when it's something that goes like that, once you know, you do better. So now we know, and obviously it can't go back to what it was. We're moving forward. So ultimately, we would love to have it, like landscaped beautifully, where people could come out, sit out there, find comfort and solace. Maybe it's just a place to go out and meditate. All right. So I think it's a space that everybody, and it's historic. It's historic. And so I'm appealing to those who are on this Zoom. We're having a Memorial Day event, May 30th. So Patty, if you could put that up.
Okay, as soon as I get the screen share capacity, I will put the flyer up. It says, Linda, that screen sharing is disabled. Can you hook me up with the screen share?
I switched it, Patty.
You're done. You can.
Okay, good. Okay. Just give me a second.
Okay.
I'm trying to get it up. But I was wondering too, don't you have, Cedar View has a Facebook page, is that correct?
Yeah, we have a Facebook page. We also have a website. So,
Excellent.
and thanks to the students at Monmouth University, we have this website pro bono from them. And we are very appreciative of everybody who has pitched in to help us in our efforts to preserve this site and to make it a space that people will, and like to come and visit and help us to keep on maintaining it and making it, we have a beautification committee, and to continue to maintain it and make it as beautiful and for everybody who would want to go out and visit. So I would say visit our website, and that is www.cedarviewcemetery.org. So our website is
Mhm.
Cedarview.
Put that in the chat, Gilda, maybe?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yes, I can do that. I think I can.
So is that where people can find information on how to donate
Yes,
on the website and Facebook, I hope?
yes, we have a
Okay.
donate. We have a donate button
Okay.
on the website that they can access.
And
So
everybody-
here's the flyer. You can see the flyer, right?
Okay, so
Yes.
the fly, so
Yeah.
back to our event, our Memorial Day event, which will take place this coming Monday, May 30th, at Cedar View Cemetery. You can park at the St.
Thank
Leo's Church. The ceremony will begin at 2 p.m., rain or shine. We will have a Civil War color guard, 3rd Regiment reenactors. We will have recognition of the U.S. colored troops, burials, flag markings, and a rededication of the cemetery, laying of a commemorative wreath, interpretive discussion of African-American life in the 19th century, and a plaque presentation, discussion of the unique nature of the cemetery and plans for continued preservation through the Friends of Cedarview. And we will have this plaque presentation by the mayor, right, John?
yes.
The mayor of Middletown. So
Yes.
Middletown Township, thanks to John and Rick Gefkin, have been very supportive of us too. So, people are finding out, and people are, pitching in however they can. So we're hoping that everybody here will spread the word, will come to the event. If you don't have anything planned for May 30th, we would welcome you and invite you to come out. And if you have any, I guess, questions or.
So I was going to suggest, anyone who has questions or comments, please just put your name in the chat, or just, put a note in the chat, you have a question or comment. We may not visually see your hand raised, or sometimes the electronic hand raising gets missed as well. So while we're waiting for that, I'll take this down. Is that okay?
Yeah, you can take it down.
I just wanted to say, there's a book that came out some years ago, Slavery and Freedom in the Rural North, but it
Yeah,
focused exclusively on Monmouth County by Graham Russell Hodges. And then a couple of years ago, Rick Gefkin wrote a book, Stories of Slavery in New Jersey. And while and this book, Rick Gefkin's book, a little bit over 1/3 of the entire content is about Monmouth County. So when you think of, all of the former slaves who lived in Monmouth County and their descendants, we know that they're buried somewhere. There are burial grounds everywhere. As I mentioned earlier, Claire Garland told me about Cedarview. She mentioned she knows of a couple of others in the area. We also know that there is a burial ground on Browns Lane in Fairhaven that came up on one of our calls last year. We were talking about the community that lived there. Lorraine Stone knows about that as well, where it's now private property, and the owners are not willing, apparently, to uncover. How many more burial grounds are in Monmouth County and the area?
To be honest with you, I don't know. Rick might know.
Rick, do you have any comment about this?
Yes, there are quite a number of, as you mentioned, Patty, historic Black cemeteries that have been unfortunately built over, but there are also others that are well known that need work. For instance, I was talking to Lorraine Stone today about what is called the Pinebrook Cemetery, way back in the area that used to be known as Macedonia. That's probably in need of some work. As you mentioned early on in the introduction, there are cemeteries that John's family is in the Atlantic Highlands area. So there are, I don't have a number off the top of my head, but there are quite a number of cemeteries dedicated to the Black families that either descended from slavery or came to New Jersey sometime afterwards.
Marion Wattenberger has a question.
Before
Thank
she,
you, Gilda. I actually have a couple of questions, but the first one is a few years ago. In fact, I think, Lorraine, it was a program that you did for an AAUW meeting at Old First Church in Middletown. And the story was related that the Black community would attend church there when I think they were slaves. But when they looked at the cemetery, only the white members of the congregation were buried in the cemetery at Old First Church. And eventually they found another cemetery in the Lincroft area. And I'm wondering, do you know, is this the cemetery where, I mean, it was like, we probably shouldn't be shocked by that story, but it was like, kind of like, you know, that moment of hearing that story. And do you know if this, for some reason, I thought this was the cemetery, but I'm not certain of that. Do you know, Joelle, by any chance? Is that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm intrigued though.
Well, maybe we could keep looking into that.
Yeah.
I'm really curious. So my other question was, I noticed that there were Reeves who had purchased space in this cemetery. And I've noticed that Reeves, and I noticed we have a Reeves on the phone call. So I mean, on the Zoom. So I noticed that sometimes it's spelled with 2 E's and sometimes it's spelled with an EA. And I know I live in Fairhaven and there were a number of Reeves families I'm just wondering, is that the same family with just different spellings at different periods of time? Or I'm just curious since it showed up in several different places.
Yeah, I don't know if Yvonne wants to answer that. As far as I know, we're really not sure. That's what it comes down to. That
Okay, thanks.
Could be some relation, but going way back, that might be cousins or a different spelling of the name. But we really, as far as I know, we're really just not sure.
Okay. Part of the reason I was curious is I know, looking back at my family a few generations, they spelled surnames in very different ways, but we're all related. So thank you. And thank you for the work you've done. This is really interesting. Thanks.
just so you know, Karen Finkelstein has put in the chat that if you need someone to video the Memorial Day event or take still photos, that they're there to volunteer.
Yeah, I answered her back.
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be great. That would be
Thank
great.
you. I also see Karen put a
Locust
post. There's a
Grove.
Locust Grove Cemetery, I guess you mean, in Eatontown, and the African American Burial Ground in Homedale. Do you want to say anything more about that, Karen?
Locust Grove is down in Eatontown, right off of Wyckoff Road. It's behind the, actually it's next to now the new Quick Check that they put up. And that's, you know, I think that is under the stewardship of Eatontown now, but it had been an African-American burial ground for the church that is up the road, the Zion AME Church. And in the news articles about Samuel Johnson, also known as Mingo Jack, it's reported that he was buried there. So that's, very significant. And I think there are some veterans stones there, but Eatontown seems to send maybe Public Works out a few times a year to, mow the lawn and clear things. But it would be great if it had a fence or something, because there's a lot of dumping that happens there from the stores that are adjacent to it. And then the one in Holmdel, I just went out there and saw it with my husband for the first time. It's at the end of a cul-de-sac in a residential area. And there's actually an easement between these two properties. And we were worried about, we didn't want to go on the wrong property and get anyone upset. So we made sure, because it's not marked, but you can tell there are 2 rows of trees and there's this little, grass pathway, and you go down there and you feel like you're in someone's backyard, but it's on the right, you see this wooded area, and there's an Irish Catholic cemetery. And then a little bit downhill is a smaller African-American burial ground with some veterans there. Someone put flags on. And then there's the Shank family burial ground in that same wooded area, full of stones. I mean, beautiful primitive gravestones from, when they had that red shale and they had those carved skulls that looked like they were, hand carved. I mean, it's just amazing how that's in such good shape. And, Sandy Hook also had a burial ground for African Americans, and I think it was called Refugee Town. There was like a settlement during the Revolutionary War, and Colonel Ty stayed there a bit on his travels. But apparently, I don't know if this has been documented fully or if it's true, but the bodies that were there in Sandy Hook were moved to a place in Brooklyn. So we'd have to do a little deep digging, no pun intended, to learn about that. And
Thank you,
gosh,
that's so helpful. I wonder, is there any central agency such as the Monmouth County Historical Association or a similar group that keeps track of all of this?
Patty, this is Ray Veth. I am the Vice President of the Monmouth County Genealogical Society. And we just started, as part of our group, Cemetery Special Interest Group. And I was out at the Schenck Covenhoven one, cleaning that up. The Holmdel Police were very involved, and the Middletown DAR was involved. So we do have a group. If anybody's interested, please let me know.
Oh, thank you so much. That's good
Yeah,
to know.
we have techniques as to how you clean up things and things to do and things not to do. And so, yes, there is a group that just started.
Monmouth County Genealogical
Genealogy,
Association.
Monmouth County Genealogy Society.
Do you want to put that in the chat for everyone?
For some reason, I tried to put something in the chat, but it's going direct message to the very first person. Let me
I
try
can put it
again.
in.
Oh, I think I
I'll put
can
it
get
in.
it. I think I can get it now. All right.
Okay.
Mine
Thank you.
keeps going to Chantel Sliney.
Yeah, I don't know who that person
You
is.
have to hit the drop down arrow and then you can go to the very top where it says everyone in the meeting.
I'm not seeing it. If you could do it, it's Monmouth
I'll
County.
take care of it. Sure.
Can I give you my email address? It's real easy. It's
Sure. Yes, go ahead.
Casper, like the ghost, CASPER, Veth, VETH, all one word, CasperVeth@AOL.com. So we've always done it for the Middletown area, and we have a couple different groups involved, but we're going to try and do stuff to help out the entire county.
Thank you so much. So, you know what, the other thing that I'm touched by is how many people and groups came together for this effort for the Cedar View Cemetery, considering the condition that it was in, and it was neglected. It sounds like it was completely forgotten by, well, by most people, I suppose, except the families, the descendants. And look at all the people that came. And
Special thank you to Joelle. Really,
yeah,
Joelle doesn't get enough kudos for that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
wonderful job.
Yep.
but what it makes me think of is, and you did talk about this, Joelle, about how important it is to show the respect for our ancestors, for the departed, whoever they are. There's just something, you know, why this touches us. Why do these cemeteries matter? When you really think about it, we know they matter, but it's just, I'm really touched at the whole thing.
You know, these were lives that were lived. That, you know, that's how I felt when I saw it. I'm like, these were people that had lives, you know, that lived at this particular time in history, and in spite of what was happening, they had lives. You know, Joelle read how Mr. Reeves and his wife walked from Lincroft to Red Bank to go to church. You know, so in spite of what the time was dictating as far as social, these people had lives where they were doing, you know, going to church, you know, bringing their children at some point, you know, and they mattered. You know, they matter. You know, it's, you know, the men who fought for their freedom, fought for their own freedom in the Civil War. I mean, please, that's, you know, they matter. And that's just the bottom line. You know, there's I think said Mr. Reeves died at 80. You know, they lived a long life. He lived a long life. All right.
I think if you look
It
at
is to be respected and cared for
And also, I think a lot of the people, you know, that they're buried there. I mean, a lot of these families, these men and women, I mean, they helped to shape, you know, Middletown, Lincroft. I mean, if you look at their history, see what they've done. I mean, the gentleman he died later, of course. One of them actually owned this house. He bought it in 1915. Augustus Schrader, who married a Reeves. I mean, he was one of the best masons in this area. So he did a lot of stonework in Navesink, Highlands, Middletown. And working, he didn't have this. Later, he had his own company, his own business, small business near retirement. But, you know, who knows this? And that's just one person. People who, so there's a lot of history there as far as, like you said, people from Civil War, but just people who, like I said, helped form Middletown and Lincroft. And, you know, it's just very important.
Thank you. Lorraine Stone, you raised your hand. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, if I can get myself unmuted, I might be able to. This is a great evening, great topic. So much more work to do, and kudos to all of you who have jumped in and rolled up your sleeves. I kind of want to second something that Joelle said. The Boy Scouts, and particularly the Eagle Scouts, have taken on a lot of cemeteries. I don't know, at least 10 years ago, I was renting a house in Eatontown, and the owner came to me saying her son was going to be doing some work for his Eagle badge in the cemetery over behind Quick Check. And did I know anybody, and did I know anything? And, I called Claire Garland, and I don't know who else, but that is the Locust Cemetery. And yeah, it is thought that members of the Amy Zion Church down the road might have been buried there. But the other thing it's kind of it's sad to think about. The segregation follows us right into death. So slaves who worked for a family, a household for all their lives are not buried in the same cemetery. So many of them are just lost. We don't know, and they are stumbled upon. So that's why this effort is so critical, so important. And I think, as Rick might have mentioned, things have been built over. You know, you can't know what you don't know. And when nobody was looking, and there was a time that no one was at all interested. So this is a wonderful effort. And thank you so much. And yes, Marion, you do remember correctly, the slaves worshiped with their slave owners in the church, and yet when they died, they could not be buried in the same grave. You know, you can't make this stuff up. That's all I can say. Thank you. Keep up the good work. And I would like to try to get involved with Pinebrook, if we can find out anything about that cemetery, because we know that's the old Reeves town back there. So we know there are graves back there. Thanks.
Thank you, Lorraine. I see that Raymond has a question in the chat about asking, is the house of Charles Reeves still standing? And where is it located? Does anyone know?
Well, it's not standing anymore. It was located on Middletown Lincroft Road, right next to, it's on the corner. It's a yellow house there now, a little house, yellow house. It's right next to the Molzon's nursery, the big nursery there. So if you're coming down from Five Corners, you go past Molzon, they were neighbors. They knew each other. And then, not Charles Reeves, but the descendants. We used to go out there. The house was there until the I guess was like the early '80s when we finally sold the house, and it was knocked down. But that house was originally located over by Brookdale, over by Christian Brothers Academy.
Oh, wow.
And they took the house and they actually rolled it, but by the mule and log,
Right.
and rolled the house all the way across the field. And then my father said they spun the house around, whatever, and they sat it, and that was it. That's what the house was ever since, I guess, 1850 to, and then the land itself was Crawford had. He didn't sell it but he gave him life rights to the property, to Charles Reeves and Hannah. And when Charles died in 1900, that's when the son James actually bought the property from Crawford's grandson. Oh, no, Crawford's son, I believe. And so it's quite a bit of history, but I remember the house. Oh yeah, I mean, it's like I said, just 1980 where it was knocked down. And yeah.
Thank you. So Claire Garland put a note in the chat. The Shadow Rest Cemetery is located off Squonkam Road in Tinton Falls, off Ruffin Court. Lots of Civil War flags put up on Memorial Day. Claire, did you want to say anything more about the cemetery?
Hi, everybody. The Boy Scouts did a cleanup job on that cemetery years ago, and I happened to have on New Jersey News one afternoon when a report came on and they were showing the stones and different things. I had never been out there, and it just so happened the headstone that the camera viewed happened to be my grandmother's grandparents. Richard P. Reeve and Suzanne Reeve from New York. So that was really just a stroke of luck to happen to look up at that moment to see that on TV. I had heard about that cemetery for years, but just never really took the time to investigate it. So one day I went out there. And it's off of Squonkam Road. There's a housing development off of Ruffin Court, big colonials, about 5 of them. And then to the left, you'll see 2 pillars 2 stone pillars and a driveway. And that's the lane that goes into that cemetery. So the first cemetery on the right is the American Indian burial ground, where my grandmother's ancestors were, plus a lot of other people, Chameau and Skank and names from the past. And then if you go down that lane a little bit, you come to a big cemetery, mostly of Ruffins, Ruffin. So it must have been the white Ruffins on one side of the lane, and then the people of color on the other side of the lane. It's kind of hidden though. I mean, if you don't know it's there, you'd never see it from the road. And then Route 18 kind of borders one side of it. And of course, Squonkam Road borders the other side of it. So it's a pretty good sized cemetery, and the Boy Scouts hadn't cleaned it up and they hadn't done a report on it. I wouldn't have quite known much about it. But I did take pictures and put some of those pictures in some of my talks. And so glad I found out about it. It's an interesting place. Somebody must know it's there though, because if you go there after Memorial Day, there are flags on the graves of Civil War veterans or veterans. So,
Thank you so much. That's wonderful to hear.
We need a map of all these cemeteries.
Well, it sounds like
Project.
the Genealogy Association is
Mhm.
working on that. Thank you so much. Karen put in the chat regarding the Shadow Rest Cemetery. There's been a cleanup in progress for the past 2 weekends, organized by Ron Erickson. He's asking for help once more this coming weekend. So there's a Facebook link for those who want to get that before the meeting ends.
We being the Monmouth County Genealogy Society, we probably cleaned up 12 or 15 cemeteries already, including the African American Cemetery in Navesink. I think Rick referenced it earlier. It's off of Kings Highway or Monmouth Boulevard right there. I have a handwritten list from Mr. Jones, who was he maintained it for many years until he passed away. So if anybody has any ancestors or has any interest in that, please let me know.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's the Crystal Stream Cemetery.
Crystal Stream, yes.
In Navesink. And I looked it up. There's a really very nice short little video on YouTube. I just Googled Crystal Stream Cemetery, and it looks like the town of Middletown put together a very nice little video about the cemetery and the origins. It started in 1851. It's connected with the American Methodist Episcopal Church of what they used to call Riceville in Navesink, and today is called Quinn Chapel.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Quinn Chapel is one of the oldest churches, and that cemetery is right there adjacent to the church. I didn't realize it was called something else before, but I know some people that attend Quinn Chapel in Highlands, Atlantic Highlands.
Right now, they're partnering with St. Paul's to try to, because St. Paul's also uses it. It's still an active cemetery, and they're trying to raise money to improve it. It does need some work. I mean, Ray Beth and the genealogy did a great job. I mean, it was like 100% turnaround of how it used to look. They just came in and did a great job in Middletown. I guess right now they're just looking for ongoing funds. And so I just joined the committee. I actually they were gonna have a meeting the other day. They had to cancel the meeting for some reason. And so I'm waiting to see what's happening. But what I'm getting is that's what they're really looking at, is for families to get involved. And like I said, my grandparents are buried there. So my family should definitely be involved with helping to donate.
The Smack family, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yes. Well-known name in town.
Yeah.
John, if you need any help, please let me know, and I can get a group of people to come out and help again.
Well, and I think they have some papers from Mr. Jones, but if you have a complete list, they might be looking for that, because I think they might have lost part of that, some of those
Okay,
papers.
please let me know then.
I will.
I have a question. Does anybody know about any cemeteries up in northern Monmouth County, specifically Matawan, Aberdeen? I'm up in that area. And there is one that I see on Lloyd Road that someone said that could possibly have been remnants of an African-American burial. I haven't really been able to find any information out on that.
I do not have it handy, but if you check Ed Razor's book, it was about the tombstones of Monmouth County. It's the most conclusive summary of cemeteries, burial grounds, etc., in all of Monmouth County.
All of Monmouth County. Okay, thank you.
To my knowledge, though, to answer your question, I don't believe there was an African-American cemetery in that Matawan area. I could be wrong. The closest one was in Homedale, next to the Shank Covenhoven one.
Okay. Thank you.
Raymond, is that the name of the book, Tombstones of Monmouth County?
It's called Tombstones and Engraving. I'd have to look into my bibliography, but I reference it a lot. And I apologize, I don't have the book at my fingertips, or I would tell it. But his name is Ed Razor, R-A-S-E-R. He recently passed away. He wrote the book. He was about 88 when he wrote it.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
It's amazing what he did.
Wow.
Thank you. That's
Wow.
wonderful. That's
Thank
great.
you. Yeah.
So friends, I know we're almost at our time, and we can certainly stay a few minutes longer, but I just want to remind anyone who came in late, we do have a program for June 29th, which I hope you join. Linda, do we know?
Not definite, but we're hoping,
General?
I announced it earlier in the program that we have Chief Mann with us, talking about Indigenous people in New Jersey, and specifically the Lenape Ramapo Native tribes.
Yeah, he's from North Jersey, mostly. Yep.
Also, I just wanted to say, as far as Ray, if you wouldn't mind, I'm Linda Hewitt from the library. I'd really like to speak with you. Maybe we can put together a display at the library or something. You opened up a whole bunch of subjects tonight.
Okay. And I will bring along Elizabeth McDermott. I think you know her, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone have any more questions for our panelists? I really just want to say thank you for a beautiful, wonderful presentation. Who would think that burial grounds could be so heartening?
Oh, no, they are.
But they are.
Our ancestors, isn't it?
They are.
Right.
Yeah.
It's family, it's history, legacy.
It
Yeah.
just shows all the negative that we dwell on, all the positive work being done. It's wonderful.
I'm gonna share a real quick story.
Nice
I
to
was
see
out
it.
at the cemetery cleaning one day. I was just doing cut some trees up and stuff. And I was out by myself. And like I said, I think it was like a little gift from the cemetery, from relatives or from nature, that I was able to actually see deer, little fawn nursing from its mother. And I could never have seen that anyplace else. You always see deer scattering and stuff, but it was so quiet and peaceful. And I just finished some work. I sat down, and there they were. And I was like, that's really nice. It's really something I'll never see.
Yeah.
You know,
That was peaceful.
Yeah, peaceful. Peaceful.
That's a nice story to end on, isn't it?
It is. Yes, it is. It is.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks, Joelle.
Much appreciated.
See you May 30th.
Yes.
Yes, everyone.
May 30th. May
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock. Everyone's going to be there.
Take care. Thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.